Today, I'm unboxing and setting up the new GoPro Mission 1 Pro completely from scratch. I'll show you exactly what comes in the box, prepare the camera for its first use, connect it to the GoPro Quik app, install the latest firmware, and then go through the main settings and controls directly on the camera. So this is essentially a complete first-time setup guide, from opening the package to having the Mission 1 Pro ready for its first real recording. Inside the box is the actual Mission 1 Pro retail package, and there is already quite a lot of information printed around it. This is the Pro version of GoPro's new Mission 1 platform, built around a 1-inch sensor and the new GP3 processor. It is capable of recording up to 8K at 60 frames per second, while 4K recording can go all the way up to 240 frames per second. We'll see many of these options directly in the menus later in the video. The outer sleeve opens to reveal a reusable hard case, which I definitely prefer to the disposable plastic packaging we still see with some cameras. This gives you somewhere to keep the camera and smaller accessories when you are not using them. On top, we have the initial documentation, including the quick start information, safety information, and a few additional cards. There isn't a traditional thick instruction manual here because most of the setup process is designed to be completed directly on the camera and through the GoPro Quik app. Under the paperwork, we finally get to the actual equipment. Everything is organized to separate compartments inside the case. We have the camera itself, the rechargeable battery, a USB cable for charging and data, and the included mounting hardware. There is also the familiar GoPro mounting buckle and thumb screw, so the camera can immediately be used with the enormous ecosystem of existing GoPro mounts. I'll take everything out first so we can see exactly what is included before preparing the camera. The accessory package is fairly simple, but everything necessary to get started is here. The USB cable can be used for charging and connecting the camera, while the mounting components give us the standard GoPro interface for attaching it to compatible accessories. I'll put these to one side for the moment because the camera itself is obviously the most interesting part. Before turning it on, I want to remove all the protective material and take a quick look around the body. There are several protective films covering the camera when it comes out of the box, including protection over the displays and other exposed surfaces. I always remove these before the first startup, partly because it gives us a better view of the screens, and partly because this is a good opportunity to inspect a new camera carefully. The Mission 1 Pro still looks unmistakably like a GoPro, but the design feels more substantial and more focused on serious video production than a conventional compact action camera. On the back, we have the large touchscreen that will be used for almost all of the configuration in this video. The front contains the lens and front display, while the physical controls remain easy to reach when the camera is mounted or when operating the touchscreen is inconvenient. Around the body, there are also access doors and mounting points. I'll look at the mounting system again at the end, but first we need to give the camera some power and storage. This is the supplied rechargeable battery. Opening the side compartment gives access to the battery area as well as the microSD card slot. The battery simply slides into position, and there is a pull tab to make removing it easier later. Before closing the door, however, we also need a memory card. And with a camera capable of recording very high resolution and high bitrate video, the speed of that card is something you should definitely pay attention to. I have several microSD cards here, but I'm going to use a fast card that meets GoPro's required performance specification. For this camera, you want at least a V30 or UHS-3 rated card. Insert it carefully in the correct orientation and press until it locks into position. With the card and battery installed, I can close the compartment securely. The basic hardware preparation is now complete, so after almost 4 minutes of unboxing, it is finally time for the first startup. Holding the power button brings the Mission 1 Pro to life for the first time. We see the startup screen, followed by the initial configuration process. As with other modern GoPro cameras, the first setup involves both the camera and a smartphone. The camera guides us through the first steps and then presents a QR code that can be used to continue in the GoPro Quik app. So I'll bring in my phone and complete the rest of the connection process from there. After installing the GoPro Quik app on your phone, open the app and begin adding a new camera. If you are doing this for the first time, the application may ask for Bluetooth, local network, and other permissions. These are necessary for discovering the camera, establishing the wireless connection, and transferring media later. Quick searches for nearby GoPro cameras and should detect the Mission 1 PRO automatically as long as the camera remains powered on and close to the phone. Once the camera is detected, Quick begins the pairing process. The phone and camera exchange connection information, and there are a few confirmation screens to work through. Nothing here is particularly complicated, but I would recommend keeping both devices close together until everything has finished. This initial connection is useful not only for remote control and transferring clips, it also allows GoPro Quik to check the camera software immediately, which is exactly what I want to do before spending time configuring all of my recording settings. The app now recognizes the camera and continues with the final setup steps. I'm accepting the required prompts and allowing the connection to complete. If your screens look slightly different, that may simply be because the Quik app or camera firmware has changed since this video was recorded. The important sequence remains the same. Pair the camera, complete the initial configuration, and make sure the software is current. Once that is done, we can configure the camera, knowing that all of the latest available options are installed. As expected, with a brand new camera, a firmware update is available. Quik downloads the update first and then transfers it to the Mission 1 Pro. During this stage, I would avoid turning either device off, removing the battery, or interrupting the connection. The camera may restart during the process, and that is completely normal. Updates can also take several minutes depending on the firmware size and connection speed, so there is no reason to worry if the progress screen seems to stay in one place for a while. The update is now finishing, and the camera restarts with the new firmware installed. Quik confirms the connection again, and from here, the Mission 1 Pro is basically ready to use. But before recording anything important, I want to go through the menus and see how the camera is configured out of the box. There are far more options here than simply choosing 4K and pressing the record button, and understanding where the main controls are located will make the camera considerably easier to use later. Swiping down from the main shooting screen opens the control dashboard. This gives quick access to frequently used camera functions without going deeply into the menu system every time. The layout is designed for touchscreen use, with large icons that are easy to select even on a relatively small display. There are controls here for several camera behaviors and shortcuts, while the Preferences section takes us into the more permanent system configuration. Since this is the first setup, that is where I'm going next. Inside Preferences, we can manage the settings that control the camera itself rather than the actual video image. This includes wireless connections and other general behavior. Most of these options are the type of settings you configure once and then rarely need to touch again. It is still worth going through them on a new camera because your preferred configuration may be different from GoPro's defaults. In particular, I always check the regional and system options before creating any recording presets. Here we have language, regional format, and several other basic options. Regional format is more important than it may initially appear because it determines which frame rate standards are available. Since I normally work in Europe, I use the appropriate regional setting for a PAL-based production workflow. That makes it easier to stay consistent with my other cameras and with 50 Hz lighting. Once the general preferences are configured, we can return to the main screen and start looking at the much more interesting video controls. The Mission 1 Pro uses different shooting modes and presets, so you don't have to rebuild every combination of settings each time you want to shoot something different. Here, for example, we can move between configurations intended for different types of shooting. Presets are extremely useful on a camera. With this many options, you might have one for normal cinematic footage, another for action, another for low light, and another specifically for high frame rate slow motion. Once configured, changing your entire setup can take only a couple of taps. Now we reach one of the main settings, resolution and frame rate. The available combinations depend on the selected recording mode, but the Mission 1 PRO goes all the way up to 8K recording at 60 frames per second. At 4K, it can reach 240 frames per second, which gives a huge amount of flexibility for slow motion. You obviously don't need these maximum settings for every shot. Higher resolution and frame rates create larger files and place more demand on the camera, storage, and editing system. For normal shooting, I would choose the resolution and frame rate according to the final project, rather than automatically selecting the biggest number available. If your final video is 4K, recording in 4K may already be all you need. Higher resolutions can be useful when you want additional room for cropping or reframing. High frame rates are valuable when you intend to slow the footage down later. The important thing is that Mission 1 Pro gives you a very wide range of combinations, from everyday recording to specialized high-speed capture. Moving further into the recording setup brings us to image tuning. This is where the camera starts to feel less like a simple action camera and more like a compact production tool. Instead of relying entirely on automatic processing, we can decide how much control we want over the finished image. For quick shooting, many of these settings can simply remain automatic. But when you are matching footage with other cameras, working under controlled lighting, or planning a more serious color grading workflow, the additional control becomes much more valuable. Another important option is HyperSmooth Stabilization. GoPro has built its reputation partly around electronic stabilization, and here we can configure how strongly the camera stabilizes the image. Maximum stabilization can be extremely useful when the camera is handheld, mounted on a bicycle, attached to a vehicle, or used for any type of fast movement. But stabilization is still a creative choice. It can affect the field of view and the overall look of the shot, so I don't necessarily want the strongest setting for every situation. There are also advanced recording controls, including bitrate related options and other image parameters. A higher bitrate gives the encoder more data to describe fine detail and complex movement, but it also produces larger files. For casual footage, maximum quality may not always be necessary. For footage that will be edited heavily, color graded, or used alongside larger production cameras, I generally prefer to preserve as much image information as practical. The shutter setting can be left on auto, which is the easiest choice for action shooting, where lighting conditions may change constantly. But manual shutter control becomes useful when you want predictable motion blur and a more controlled cinematic look. The traditional starting point is a shutter speed roughly twice your frame rate, although action cameras are often used in situations where that rule isn't practical. Having both automatic and manual options means the Mission 1 Pro can be configured either for convenience or for a much more controlled production workflow. The same idea applies to exposure and color-related settings. Automatic white balance and ISO are extremely convenient when moving quickly between different environments. In a studio or another controlled location, manual values can give much better consistency because the camera is not continuously changing its interpretation of the scene. If I were matching this GoPro with one of my main cameras, I would normally prefer to lock as many important parameters as possible. For travel, action, or casual shooting, automatic control is obviously much faster. Another option worth understanding is aspect ratio. Different aspect ratios make sense for different destinations and different types of framing. A conventional 16:9 frame is still the natural choice for standard YouTube video and television-style content, while taller formats provide more vertical information and additional flexibility for reframing. The camera also supports recording options designed around modern social media delivery, so you can think about the final destination before you start shooting, rather than trying to force every clip into a different format later. Digital lens changes the apparent field of view without physically replacing the lens. Wider settings are great for action, first-person perspectives, and situations where you want to capture as much of the environment as possible. A more linear field of view gives a more natural perspective with less of the exaggerated wide-angle appearance associated with traditional action cameras. There is no universally best setting. It depends completely on the shot, which is why having quick access to digital lens directly from the shooting interface is useful. With the software side finished, let's take one more look at the physical camera. The body remains compact enough for traditional GoPro-style use, And the integrated mounting system means you are not limited to a tripod or handheld shooting. Depending on the accessory, the camera can be mounted very quickly and positioned in places where a conventional mirrorless camera would be difficult or impossible to use. That combination of a compact body and much more advanced recording control is really the interesting idea behind the Mission 1 Pro. The supplied GoPro mounting components use the familiar interface, so existing GoPro users will immediately understand how everything connects. The buckle and thumb screw make it possible to attach and remove the camera quickly, while the huge GoPro accessory ecosystem gives you countless other options. And with that, the GoPro Mission 1 Pro is completely unboxed, updated, configured, and ready for its first real shoot. This was only the initial setup. So the next step is much more interesting. Taking it outside, testing the different recording modes, stabilization, image quality, and low light performance, and seeing what this 1-inch GoPro can actually do. But for now, everything is installed, everything is working, and the camera is ready to record. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more detailed reviews and filmmaking gear. And I will see you in the next video.